cause and providing an effective date.
I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
One clarification, in the ordinance.
Hold on one second, do I have a second?
No, second.
Thank you.
Well, the ordinance you have attached is slightly different from the one that was approved on first reading. So you may have to amend your motion that this reflects some changes that were requested to be incorporated in the ordinance. And those were highlighted in yellow in your board packet.
Why not? Yeah. Easy for folks to read.
Okay, did you highlight?
I agree. I amend the motion.
You amend the motion?
Acknowledge that this is the one that's in your book, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, do I have a second on the amended?
I mean, I have a second, I'll go along, but I do have a question.
Okay, please, Vice Mayor.
In its purest form, what we're trying to achieve here is a ADA compliant pathway through our sidewalk, is that correct?
Essentially, yes, and to meet the dictates as spelled out in the lease between the city and Florida Department of Transportation when they redid the road.
And we've met, or not we've met, but the city has met with as many interested business owners as they could muster together recently and kind of gone over this with them.
Yes, they've been sent letters, public services went out and did hand deliveries of notices for the meeting, invited them both to this public hearing as well as the previous one, and then we had a meeting last night at Bros, and I would say maybe 10 or 12 of business owners downtown came to that meeting.
Okay. What is the, here's my, I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible, in the spirit of just creating a pathway that is ADA compliant. What is the least amount of, what's the smallest dimension permissible under ADA rules that we can live, that are acceptable?
42 inches, and the ordinance here has 48.
Okay. Is there a reason why we went with 48? Obviously, the more
Easy to
space,
measure.
it's easy to measure, that's why we
It's
did it?
somewhat easy to enforce, and it gives a little bit of wiggle room. 42 inches is like the very bare minimum. So I wanted to have a little bit of breathing room, so if we had to shift things around a little bit, there could be judgments made out in the street or out in the field that maybe you're at 49, maybe you're at 47. As long as you hit 42 clear, we would be okay.
And who's gonna make that determination?
We're gonna have to be a combination of code compliance and public services that we'll have to measure and make sure that that is a clear space. Because not only does it have to be clear, it also has to meet the elevation topography requirements, that it's not too sloped or doesn't have impediments such as a raised curb or a raised grate or tree roots and that sort of thing.
Are we really trained at the city, at the staff level, to be able to enforce something like this?
That's why I wanted something that we're gonna enforce, the 48 inch. Well, I think we can handle that. The other parts of it are gonna be difficult. Because as I mentioned when this started, ADA was not mentioned anywhere in the city's code except when it came to a handicap accessible parking space. And we cannot cite somebody if it's not in our code. So we want to make it very clear and very easy to understand.
May I continue?
Yes, please.
So do we have a plan or a vision of how that we're gonna train these folks, so that they have to get certified, or is there some sort of a formal process that our staff has to go through?
Well, part of the application requires that the owner of the business who wants to have a sidewalk cafe show on a plan where their tables and chairs would be. Staff and public services will review that and ensure that the ADA compliant pathway is preserved. If we're having enforcement problems, the plan will go out in the field, we'll check it, and you either meet or you don't.
Okay, and the final comment. I'm wondering, as you go down, particularly Lake Avenue, one side of the street has a huge advantage in terms of width over the other side.
Yes.
Is there any benefit, could there be any benefit to maybe, getting away from 48 inches and bringing it closer to 42 so we can maybe give some relief to the folks that are on the other side that don't have as much to work with?
It's only mentioned, I think, in one section of the ordinance. If you wish it to be 42, we can make it 42.
And having heard what you just said, it seems to me like that is just as easy to enforce 42 as it would be 48. Because if the business owners are going to submit a plan that says, look, here's where my tables are gonna be, and they gotta live by that, then when you go out, what difference does it make if they set their plan at 42 or 45 or 48, they're obligated at that point to meet their plan, is that correct?
Based on how you phrase it, I would say yes.
Does anybody else feel that way?
It's a few inches.
Commissioner Zerdy?
When they come out for other things, that and code officers will come out for something like even a railing where they have to have 4 inches clear, they come out with a sphere that's a solid sphere and they just try to push it in there. They could have a 42-inch long, extra long yardstick that's 42 inches and just go around. It's easy to set them up to go out there with a measurement device that's not, going to be dealing with stretching, take that. So
Not rocket
it's
science.
right. That's exactly right. So I think that's a good way to do it. But and we've had sidewalk cafe permits already going on. I've personally been involved in a couple of them. You do turn in a 1/4-inch scale floor plan. It says here's where your tables and chairs are going to go, and you do show the path. You've got to outline it on there where that's going to be. So if a code officer would have that kind of training, which they do anyway, to at least look at a drawing, like a plan, they can see that and compare to what they have. And that's something the owner turned in, so it's not like they didn't know. They turned in a document stating, this is what I'm going to do, period. So if the patrons move those things around, that's maybe a little bit of a different story, I guess, but they still should know, and the intent was there.
Commissioner Morrison?
I would support the 42, but again, you touched on something that when patrons move chairs around, it has to be a policing by that business to make sure, because, I am down there and I watch it every day in front of certain businesses where people sit there and somebody comes through with a wheelchair and they just sit there. To me, it's common sense that you would get up and allow that person to pass, but I can tell you it's not happening. So, I would support the 42, but, we need to make sure that that is being enforced. Because, again, with 48, you give them a little bit more room, they don't have to police it as much. If it's 42, they're really gonna have to police it.
Vice Mayor?
Well, a deal's a deal, okay? No matter where we set that benchmark, it's the responsibility of the business owner to meet their obligation to the permit, okay? So, I get the idea that tables get jostled, folks moving the tables, but every single time that the patrons get up from that table, it's the business owner's responsibility to make sure the table's where it's supposed to be at all times, okay? So, patrons moving the tables around is not an acceptable, issue. The only thing I would ask that I'm not hearing, and I want this for the public's benefit, what is the penalty for non-performance here? What is the penalty to the business owner if they do not comply?
Commissioner Emerson?
And to take that one step further, what's the penalty? And do we have staff to police it? Because again, we know that we don't have enough staff to take care of some things on the weekends. As we move forward, is that something that, we're gonna have code officers to move forward with policing on the weekends?
Right now, we have a code officer that rotates, that works basically a standard day, 8 to 5, 9 to 6 on Saturdays. We do not have code compliance officers sufficient to have them be there in the evening and on Sunday.
Yep.
One of the things that Ms. Hornstein mentioned with the RFP, we have included having a much broader array of code compliance servers in the city that will be present 7 days a week.
Okay.
Follow-up?
Because the reason I brought that up is this came up because we had handicapped people that could not get down Lake and Lucerne, and it was a big issue. So if it's one thing to put something and let everyone know, again, we've done all the education, we've reached out to these people, multiple letters, you had mentioned that at Jamie's department, hand delivered to all, I also did. Dolores made out a flyer, and I hand delivered, and we still only got about 10 or 20 people. So we need to make sure that, we have, and I can say we have done everything we can to make sure that everybody's on the same page. So we're not going out and identifying anyone or trying to be the bad guy, we're trying to move forward with ADA.
I agree with you, Commissioner Rowland, if I might just, Commissioner Zeri for a second, say, you know me in the law, right? We have to have ADA compliance, period. That's the rule, that's the law. And how would you feel it if you were in a wheelchair, or your loved one was in a wheelchair, or a baby stroller, or anything else, they couldn't have access on the road and had to go out in the middle of the street to move around? It's our job, it's our requirement to provide ADA access. So, that's that. The question I have for you is, where does the FDOT regulations, the additional 6 feet or whatever it is, come into play? And does that relate to this ordinance or not?
It does. The lease, as it was stipulated, stated that obstructions on the sidewalk could not come any closer than 6 feet from the inside face of the curb, and that curb runs in a straight line and is the curb closest to the buildings. Bulb outs are not included, especially the corners. And so on, as Mr. Commissioner Maxwell mentioned, there is a great deal more room on the south side of Lake and the north side of Lucerne. The middle block is severely pampered. After you take off the 6 feet and you put in the clear 42 or 48 inch path, so you avoid the trees, in some places there's maybe only 2 feet that you can use. That's it.
Right. Commissioner Zeri?
And there was two things here. One, as far as Commissioner Maxwell's question on the penalty for us enforcing, this is a state and a federal law. There are state and federal penalties for this. So, and they're much more severe than what we have here at the city. So if people would send in their complaints and stay on top of them and help people that are having issues and make that aware and register that with the state, especially, we have to get the department there for them to get that. And I think it'd be helpful to get that information out where they could contact and register a complaint. You really would need to take a picture and register this, and especially if it goes to beyond that to a federal level of, that will get those attention, because that is a severe infraction. Our law here cannot be any more stringent than, I mean, it can be more stringent, it just can't be less.
I mean, our law, you asked a question about the penalties, our law talks about $100 fine, up to $500 fine, but you're absolutely right. If one of our businesses, and I'm hoping this doesn't happen, but if one of them gets sued in an ADA lawsuit, they will all find religion right away, because they'll be spending thousands of dollars defending that case, paying a settlement on that case, and, you know, they're all lawyers and people that go around looking for this kind of lawsuit. So we hope that doesn't happen, but that's really the message I know that I think that Lisa tried to convey yesterday, because in the meeting, she conveyed to some of the business owners. The real issue isn't the city. We're trying to help protect you. Because you get that lawsuit, that's going to cost a lot more than anything we're talking about here.
And I agree, like I said, the law is the law. The one big look from a million feet up is, what does the city, I mean, the outside cafe portions of these businesses create the vibrant look of the downtown, having those people bustling, those outdoor seating areas. People come, I mean, that was the success of other communities when they started to have those cafe type, you know, outdoor areas. It shows a town that's bustling and that's got activity going on, and people, you know, want to come to that type of environment. It's a crucial part, and I don't know what, if any, damage that would do to it. How many other municipalities have FDOT that own their downtown corridor?
Successful, like downtown environments we're trying to create, I don't know. I don't think there are any.
Are they owned by the individual municipalities?
Well, Delray, Clematis, and Atlantic are two that always come up. Those are city roads. That's why you see the tables on the curbs, and then a walk area, and then more tables in the building.
So needless to say, they have to follow the ADA requirements, but they do
have
not,
city
but they
codes.
don't have the extra 6 feet for the FDOT.
FDOT is run by engineers. Engineers view those roads as traffic corridors to move cars. They don't really care about the things that happen that's not related to moving traffic. And that's why they require the 6 feet for a lot of other reasons. Cities, we see it as a downtown, a healthy, functioning business district, an entertainment venue. We would treat it differently if we owned it. We would be more like Clematis Street.
So if we owned it,
We would change the rules.
so we would not have to follow the 6 feet, but we would of
Correct.
course have to follow our
Always.
ADA compliance always.
ADA's federal, there's no wiggle room on that.
Okay. Is that a conversation that we're willing to have at some point?
That's,
Yeah.
we're already out.
We've been in the process of working.
See, I told you, when you ask a question, they've been working on it 4 or 5 times.
Well, we've been working with FDOT and going back and forth before we would bring it to this body to really have that discussion. You know, we need to be very clear about what the liabilities are, both from a maintenance, the current condition of the roadway, its ADA issues, drainage, all kinds of things. And the idea, like any time we would acquire an asset, we would want it at its newest and best condition before you take it, or that there'd be some kind of monetary trade-offs for maintenance and different things. It floods by the bridge, it's going to continue to flood.
Right.
And that's an issue. There may be some ADA, and you know the sidewalk issues on the west side. So all those things we have been working on very intently with a lot of FDOT staff and a lot of our staff time, you know, Jamie involved in his staff. So, yeah, the answer is yes.
Well, I'm just concerned, you know, we need to have our city shine, and we have to do what we can to help people stay alive in this economy, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not only that, it's a plus, it's a draw to the downtown.
Yes,
Commissioner Emerson?
Well, and I just wanted to comment on that too. When we first looked at, because I asked Mike, I said, why doesn't Delray and West Palm Beach have to deal with this? So that's how we kind of got started with looking at what it looks like to take it over. But one of the meetings we were at, when I first became a commissioner, I called them and I said, remember how rusted this pole out here was? And I said, who is this? And they said, it's DOT. So at our first meeting, when we had DOT there, I said, can you fix this rusted pole that we've been trying? You see the pole is no longer rusted. So I thank staff and I thank Department of Transportation for actually fixing that. But, you know, it takes, like you said before, some things that, you know, you think we can move forward quickly take so long. So, you know, it is a process, we are looking at it, but unfortunately, and we told the merchants last night, we have to comply now. You know, this is something that we have to fix now, and then a year, 2 years down the road, if we can do something with the streets, then we can come back and look at it.
All right. So this, is there anything that relates to the 6 feet in this ordinance? I didn't say that.
Yes.
Which part? Can you just highlight? That's the old stuff for the city.
On page 7,
Line 296 of the ordinance.
correct, page 7, line 296, and yellow shall not include sidewalk, in order that a 6-foot setback does not provide.
Okay.
And just so everybody's clear, there's a couple of sort of categories of conditions that exist. And Mr. Waters, if you just respond to this. The owners who have property lines that go out in front of their stores, are they required to follow the rule, this ordinance if they're on their own property?
No.
No. There are certain people who own out in front of their stores. I think, is Rotelli's, yeah, a few of those places own, so this is not what this is dealing with. Now, the people who are actually going to be able to put cafe tables on either city-owned property or FDOT property outside the 6 foot, they're covered under this, is that correct? And they have to pay a fee for the square footage,
Yes, a
And this-
one-time fee.
a one-time fee, so they have to not only have they get a BTR, what's all the licenses they need?
You apply for what's called a cafe permit itself. There's application fee, and application requirements. The public services staff reaffirms what's on the application and determines what the appropriate square footage is commensurate with the ordinance. And it gets back to the person as whether they can or cannot have a sidewalk cafe, and gives them the square footage they're gonna be allowed to use. there's a $4 fee for each square foot you wanna use, which is a one-time charge. Thereafter, once you're approved, you just maintain the business tax receipt for a sidewalk cafe permit each year and abide by the requirements of the ordinance.
So they're using public land for private purposes for their business, they're expanding their business footprint. So it's appropriate we charge them a fee for that. Is there any other category out there? Everybody else who can't fit those requirements shouldn't have anything out in front of their stores.
Right.
Okay. That's gonna be the problem properties we're gonna have.
Even if the existing businesses or the prior businesses there had that.
We are going, if this ordinance does pass on second reading as of October 1st, all of the existing sidewalk permits that have been issued will be revoked. If any money's been paid for them, it will be reimbursed for the fiscal year 2014 to those business owners, and they will be requested to file new applications, because I'm not correcting Commissioner Zerdy, many of the sidewalk cafe permits that have been issued do not have the requirements met of the old ordinance, which did include a survey that was to scale. We don't have the documentation, and I'm not sure it was ever submitted. And so we're gonna start fresh with everybody.
Vice Mayor?
Thank you. I think these are the last two things I want to ask about. Number one, at what point, if ever, do we revoke the privilege of having a sidewalk cafe?
If the city can revoke the sidewalk cafe permit of someone if they refuse to abide by the ordinance within 3 days of the receipt of their notice, they have more than 2 violations within a 6-month period, at which time the city can remove and charge back the property owner, the business owner, for removal of all things that are in conflict with the ordinance.
Okay, so if they get 2 violations within 6 months, we yank their for the permit.
Yes.
What happens if they get one every 6 months? Then they just,
Well, eventually you'll go to the special magistrate, and we are working, and it'll come before you later. One of the things missing from the city's ordinance is what's called it used to be called a certificate of use. We're gonna add another category of use and occupancy, and there is the ability for us to revoke their business, or the use and occupancy license in order to conduct business in the city.
okay, my last comment. Are we going to have a central location where every single business owner that's impacted by this ordinance, I can go to? If somebody from, such and such address on Lucerne calls me up and says, what the heck's going on here? I should be able to look into this little book, this log, look into that address, and say, this is exactly what you're permitted to do. Because I can tell you what's gonna happen. You had limited participation with the outreach program. And what's gonna happen when this goes into effect, folks are gonna start dialing us up, asking us all kinds of questions. I really don't wanna have to be bogging, Mike, I don't wanna bog you down with email after email after email over, what's the status on this particular property. So, is that possible to put a log together that kind of schedules all the property addresses and tells us what their status is and where we can look at their survey?
We had it last night,
Well, we didn't have all that you needed, because that wasn't actually
Okay,
to
well,
scale.
but we had the base.
The information that we submitted as the permit application, which will be reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Division as well as Public Service Department, will be what's called paperclip to the HG system and attached to the land file which is associated with the property. The hard copies of the information could be stored in a central location that would be accessible by everybody, everybody in the city, and get close to what you want. Available to the public on the city's website is an access system where you can type in a name of a business or an address, and it will list the business